Welcome, everybody, to the Digital Nomad Experts podcast by Commute. Today, we're going to talk about the instant productivity blueprint for getting to a new destination. And this topic came about through one of our listeners writing in, asking, how do you get set up when you go to a new destination? So everything related to getting up and ready to work on day one and the weeks afterwards. What are the steps that you need to take? So what we did was we came up with a blueprint which starts pre-arrival, on arrival, and post-arrival, all the steps that you need to take to be instantly productive on the very first day that you actually start working, so you're not left going, oh my God, I don't have internet, or rushing to a cafe, or like I'm missing an adapter for my computer, anything like that. We want to make sure that you are ready to go so you don't have those stressful situations, which I'm pretty sure all three of us have been through. I have certainly been through at least 6 as we were making this list today that I can think of, which is embarrassing, it's unprofessional, and you just don't want it to happen. So we're going to take you through the entire list, and by the time we're done, you're going to know exactly what you need to do in order to be super productive to start your very first trip as a digital nomad. So before we do that, let's go around the room. We've got Marissa and Diego and myself here today. We've got a full house. So we'll start with Diego. Diego, how you doing?
Hey, how's it going? I'm in Germany currently. I just celebrated Christmas and New Year's here with my family. That is very much a tradition of mine. And it's just nice to be able to be at home again, to see them in between the travels throughout the year. How about you, Marissa?
Amazing. I am also back home in Atlanta for the holidays. So we actually don't know. You might be listening to this episode. It will definitely be after New Year's, maybe well into January, depending on when we post this episode. But the three of us are actually that time right after. Oh, it already is after New Year's. My mind is gone. In my mind, I'm like, I'm home. It's still like Christmas time. But I head to Costa Rica in 2 days, which I'm super pumped about. So yeah, by the time you're listening to this episode, I will be in Costa Rica already, which, yeah, I'm just excited to get back to the beach, leave the U.S., and back to some travels for a couple months. We'll see where that all goes. But yeah, I'm excited for 2024. Obviously, I forgot it already was 2024. So that's where I'm at this year. Jeff, how about you?
There's a weekend that bleeds over into the new year.
It's confusing.
Like, you don't really know the date until you start working, right?
No.
When you hop on your computer, you're like, oh, okay, here we go.
I feel like when I get to Costa Rica, it will be 2024. And until then, I don't know what year it is.
Yeah, my year's not counting until the first trip. I agree with you.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
my year will start on the 12th.
Perfect.
just gonna extend the holidays all the way through to the first flight.
I support that.
Yeah, I'm just soaking up the last couple weeks here at home. Dog time, just local comforts, all that kind of stuff. And then I'll be flying off to Colombia for 3 weeks, and then down to Buenos Aires, and then back to Mexico. So I feel like it's going to be a Latin American year. And like we talked about before, Marissa, I
need to go to the beach.
I get that itch, yeah. I feel like it's been 4 years now since I've been to a beach location. That's too long.
That is
incredible.
You need water.
insane.
Right? We talked about that. You need
What
water.
have you been doing?
In your life.
Where have you been?
Too many cities. Just too
I
many
feel like
cities.
it's like actually hard to avoid the beach that long as a digital nomad. So
I could
power
do
to you. It's a challenge. See you go for 4 more years.
Yeah, I'll soak it up for maybe a year, and then I'll be good. I'll fill up the tank, and I'll be good for another 4 years.
Mine never fills if I'm not there. But I am excited for this topic today. And to add, I want to say there's so many things to prepare for nomad life when you get to a destination. And I think we actually had a whole episode about that. And this one specifically is like work-wise. If you're like, how do you hit the ground running with your work, with your internet, with your Wi-Fi, with all the apps and tools and things to make sure that you can actually like jump in and not look like a fool and have your company fire you after you've just gotten your remote job.
Extreme. We actually had to rack our brains because it's kind of so on autopilot at this point. We bought all the technology, and we just kind of, I think, subconsciously go through this checklist before and during. And so as we're building out this list, we realized, there's actually quite a bit to it. So I do think this is going to be a really helpful podcast, especially for those who are going to go on their first trip coming up soon. Go, Marissa, what's the first thing on our list with the pre-arrival? We're going into 3 sections, so we've got pre-arrival.
Yeah, so there's a couple things. This is basically like quite a while before, well, depending on how far you book your Airbnb, but this is before you even book your place. So it's basically as you were looking at where you want to stay, whether that's a hotel, an Airbnb, a co-living, a co-working space, something like that. You want to make sure that your space has a place to work at. This might seem simple. You might go on and be like, oh, there's this like beautiful hotel room with a cool view or whatever. And you realize it doesn't even have to be a desk, but you want to make sure at the minimum, your Airbnb has a table, like a chair, not some like weird, I don't know, countertop that like doesn't work, but something that ergonomically works well to work for extended hours. So again, it seems like it would be common sense, but you'd be surprised how many Airbnbs and hotels especially don't have, just like somewhere where you can sit like at the right level with your computer and your keyboard and all of that. So again, you just want to make sure that a desk is ideal. That's like a nice to have, but at the very least, like a table. It sounds silly, but a table with a normal chair. That's number one.
It really does sound silly, but I can't tell you the number of Airbnbs I've been in. I'm like, there's no space, especially if you're with multiple people in an Airbnb, if you're sharing the space and there's only one desk. It's like, okay, somebody's going to be working from their bed. And that's really bad for a couple other reasons on the list. Bad for you. And it's also, it doesn't look so good if you're taking calls too.
Yeah. And to add to that, Jeff, one thing, I was recently looking at Airbnbs. This is something I wouldn't have necessarily thought about. But if you do have multiple people, it might be your partner or a friend or whoever you're with. Like we were looking at somewhere that was like really cool loft, and like the bedroom was like a lofted area, but I do coaching calls and like need privacy, or sometimes I'm doing if we're doing these podcasts and you need sound, if you have, again, whether it's a significant other or a friend, I always make sure I'm like, this bedroom needs a door. Like at the very least I can go in a bedroom and I might sit on a bed and do a private coaching call or find a weird place to set up a podcast. But if my partner or someone is working in the other room, like you need a barrier, a noise, like actual door, and not just like a cool lofted thing. So those are things you might not really think about, but it's really important.
It's a really good point. Yeah. And I'm starting to look for those a little bit more now as well, especially if you are traveling with other people, to try to have, if you can, try to have a desk in your room, right? More and more Airbnbs do offer that, and there's even settings within Airbnb that are like work optimized, so you can actually search for that. That makes it a little bit easier. And on the note of Airbnb, I can kind of take us on to our next one there. You're also going to want to reach out to your Airbnb, or again, wherever you're renting from Booking.com host, to just make sure that they do have internet. This is always something that we check before we ever even make the decision to book the place, and also for them to just confirm the speeds, right? Generally, if you're wondering like what's a decent speed for me to be able to work, if it's just you probably want at a very minimum 10 MB, just because that way you kind of know, okay, that's probably going to be good enough. Even if it fluctuates a little bit, you're going to be happy with 20 MB, and then of course anything above that is great. If you're a group of 5 people, for example, you might want to have more like 30-40 MB if you are traveling together. But yeah, that's a really, really important one to double check with them. Yeah, anything else on that front?
I would say it seems kind of excessive, but if you know you're going to a place, especially that is known to not have great Wi-Fi, it's actually important to have the host send you a screenshot of like, tell them to go there, and I get like chill saying this, and have them say like, here, I just tested it. Here's a screenshot of what it is. Like, could they send a screenshot of anything? Technically, hopefully they wouldn't like make that up. But a lot of Airbnbs will just say like, good Wi-Fi, like whatever. And it's not true. Like they will catfish you. So it is important to know, unless you're in a city that generally just is kind of good. If I'm going somewhere like that, I don't necessarily ask in the same way. And also, I would recommend, not everyone will have this, but if you read the comments like of the reviews that people have left on Airbnbs, this didn't used to be a thing years ago, but more and more, because there's so many more digital nomads now than there ever used to be. If you read those comments, a lot of times people every now and then will say like, the Wi-Fi was great, or the Wi-Fi was terrible. And then it gives you like a way to know as well. So it is really important, especially if you're going to a city or location or town or beach that is maybe known to have a little sketchier Wi-Fi.
Don't be afraid to negotiate either, because I've had subpar scores of like, hey, I will rent your place, but you have to upgrade it, and then send me a screenshot of it. And
I've done that.
Yeah, we've had that happen quite a few times. People are willing to do what it takes to rent out their place. So that's definitely on the table for a lot of them.
I would say like it seems dramatic, but like be a drama queen or king in these moments. Like I don't know. I used to feel bad asking. I'm like, oh, I don't want to make them do this. And now I'm like, you have to, because it is a matter of your work.
Yeah, let's talk about the next thing. And that's finding nearby co-working spaces and cafes that you can work from. So let me just break down what a co-working space is. Co-working space is usually an open space office type of building where a lot of other digital nomads go to work during the day. And the benefits of those are, you can always guarantee that you're going to have very good internet to work there. That's kind of the standard to open a co-working space is very good internet. Most of the time, not all of the time, there will be places to take private calls. You would want to look into how do I get those spaces and do I have to pay for them? But most of the time, you get like little phone booths, which is just like a tiny little booth that you can work in that's soundproof, and you can take short-ish 30 minutes to 60-minute calls. So it's really effective for that. And oftentimes they also have like small foods and coffees and things like that. So you can just Google that, whatever city you're going to, XYZ city plus co-working spaces. And you'll probably find especially if you're going to a hub, quite a few options on that. Another thing that you can do is Google like co-working friendly or laptop friendly cafes to work from. And I would my best recommendation is use Google Maps and just look up cafes and then search through the reviews on working with a laptop, or just Google lists. That's typically what I'm doing now. They tend to be the most effective for me. I'll just plug in the city that I'm going to and say co-working cafes or places to work on laptop in XYZ city. And depending on the size of the city, usually you're going to find quite a few articles. And I found that really effective because they'll tell you like noise level, they'll tell you Wi-Fi speed, they'll tell you whether or not they're laptop friendly, how long you can stay, all that kind of stuff. And it kind of, before you get there, it helps you get an idea of like a few backup plans. This place isn't working. You can have a few in the back pocket.
I was just going to add that someone's always written about these. It's incredible. Back when we started, like 8 years ago, there's been, you were lucky if you had one of those listicles. I still remember back then, this would be the best content strategy we could possibly create. But now you go anywhere and there's easily like 5 to 10 of those. Telling you where to go. So on the note of backups, I think really valuable as well is to think about getting an eSIM if your phone does allow for that. So very interesting as well. We were actually just talking briefly before this and we realized that the new phones, some of the new phones only have eSIMs. So that's changed a little bit from having a physical SIM. So you're going to want to prepare for that. There are eSIMs that are global, and then there's eSIMs that are regional, and then there's eSIMs specifically for a country. So you're going to want to do your research and just figure out what's the best deal in terms of data. Now, if you want that comfort of having a global one, it might still be worth having that one and getting one that's specific to your country. But one thing that's worth noting, if your phone also holds an actual SIM, then you're probably still going to get the cheapest data by getting a local SIM later on. So even if you get an eSIM plan just to be able to, hit the ground running and have a backup right away, you might still want to go and get yourself a SIM card later on. We'll talk about that in a second, but that just makes it a lot cheaper for you to have those backups.
Yeah, and with eSIM, I know people ask, I don't know, I'm actually curious what you guys use. Airlo, I think it's AIRLO. Is that what you guys use? Yeah. It's just a good one. It's an easy one that kind of has everything. It's what most people use, that you can just Google that and set it up. I do recommend just kind of like looking at it beforehand. Sometimes you can't activate it if you get a local one, until you're in the country when you get there, but you can still like kind of do it all and have it ready to go so that when you arrive, it's ready like from the moment you land on a plane. So I don't know if you're someone who needs to like respond to Slack messages or emails all the time as it relates to work, and you land somewhere, but then you have to wait in the airport and you're not, to your place for another 4 hours, and you're like, oh my gosh, I need to respond to things. I don't know. It's just nice to have that ahead of time so that when you land, you hit that tarmac on your plane. And it's also so good for other reasons to, this is not what this episode is about, but to like, get an Uber, to Google where your Airbnb is, things like that. It's just nice to have service right away for so many reasons. So an eSIM, even if you end up not like getting a physical SIM, which we'll talk about on arrival, or using other services, it's just really good to set it up ahead of time, like figure it out ahead of time. It's kind of a foreign concept. Some of them are hard to set up. I'm the first to say, like, I feel like it's a mystery every time, and they're kind of hard to do. So get familiar with it beforehand, set up as much as you can so that when you arrive, it just kind of has to activate.
I think there's a safety aspect to that too. Like if you're arriving in a new strange city and you don't know how to navigate it, you're not having data to get your Uber or your Lyft or whatever, I think you should have that prepared way ahead of time, just so that you're not scrambling to, oh my God, I'm all of a sudden out of the airport and I don't know where to go. Or, you get to the front of your Airbnb and the address doesn't line up and you're trying to use maps and you don't have data. So that's super important. Also, let me just tack something on to that. Sometimes like some people use international data roaming plans. Like I use T-Mobile sometimes. Yeah, I would set that up beforehand too. Usually it's just a few steps, but I've done it so many times where I arrive at the airport and I don't have data and I can't set it up. I have to go find Wi-Fi somewhere. And it's just a simple step just to get done before you go.
One more step to this. I feel like this is us just like, oh yeah, these were things that like I did wrong at one point and didn't have. But if you've ever gotten a new phone, so I also just got a new phone. I have AT&T, but you actually have to unlock your phone from your carrier in some cases. This is not true for all phones and carriers, but if you're on like a 1 year or 2 year plan or any sort of business plan, potentially with your company and your phone, you have to specifically have the carrier unlock your device so that you basically have the freedom to add eSIMs or physical SIM cards in other countries. So I have made this mistake, and sometimes you can only unlock it in the country that it's supposed to be. So I think I've mentioned this in another podcast episode, but I got a new phone one time, traveled all the way to Spain, and realized I literally had no way to use local data the whole time I was there. So I just had to connect from Wi-Fi from place to place, and it was a disaster. So, and I think it was like a month and a half later till I went home and could do it. That was not fun. So unlock your phone. And as Jeff said, kind of make sure your carrier works abroad or that you can do this.
As we're talking about, at the end of the day, this episode is all about work and productivity, right? So your phone is going to be your ultimate backup to when you don't have internet at your Airbnb, there's a power outage, there's something that happens, right? Or if you're at a cafe and something happens there and it just doesn't work, so that you can hop over onto your phone. Usually mobile data is almost always going to be better or more stable than the landline. Just generally speaking, you're usually going to have a connection running through, right? As long as you're in an area where there's good signal reception for it, right? So this is always going to be your ultimate backup. I would suggest that you think about it this way. My phone is probably unlocked. Let me double check. And if it's not great, if it is, I got to go fix that, right? Just have that as your default because you don't want to be in that position accidentally. There is an alternative to not using your phone. So if it is locked, you can't get it unlocked, or you just don't want to use your phone for whatever reason as that Wi-Fi signal because you don't want to use the battery or for whatever reason, right? You can get yourself something that's called like it's a MiFi device or like pocket Wi-Fi. People have a few weird names for that, but it basically allows you to put a SIM card into it, and then it creates Wi-Fi. It's the size of maybe a bit smaller than a phone typically. Usually lasts, 10 hours or so. You can connect several devices to it. It's basically just that, pocket Wi-Fi, right? But you're going to need, there's a few versions of that. There's either ones that let you, where you just buy a subscription and you pay a plan. And again, you've got this global plan or this regional plan. So very similar to the eSIM model. It basically is eSIMs, but it just existed before. And those are a little bit more pricey. So as we use this to really work from them, we tend to get ourselves local SIM cards wherever we go, unless we're only there for a week or two. So that would be the second step. But yeah, definitely get yourself one of those. They can be quite cheap. They can be pretty expensive as well. So just depending on what your budget is, have a look into that. But sometimes it's also worth looking at that and just going, wait a minute, if I have an old phone, that is effectively just a glorified MiFi device. And you can use it as that. I was going
to ask you guys, because when I first started traveling, like when I think back to 2016, 2017, 2018, I had one of those little pocket MiFi devices, and I did use it sometimes because back then you couldn't tether from your phone to your computer the way, like, it wasn't allowed. It didn't always work. Sometimes, I don't know, it just wasn't as normal. If I think back to the last probably 4 years, I think I've only used my phone as sort of that kind of personal MiFi, like equivalent of a MiFi device. And I've carried it around like literally for like the last 4 years. Like everywhere I go, I'm like, just in case. And I literally have not turned it on. I don't even know if it works. I think it does. But I'm curious, Diego, not counting Wi-Fi Tribe, but like for both of you, do you guys, like when was the last time you used a MiFi device, or do you use it?
I think I used it couple of years ago, and part of the problem that you might run into is depending on your data on your phone, you may not connect to a good network depending on where you are. Like we were in a place where I couldn't connect to a network that actually had signal, but I was able to, this was in Colombia, I was able to use a different data provider and get a chip for that and actually get a decent signal.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it can't, I'm still gonna pack that.
I think I'm still going to carry it, but I just literally haven't used it in probably almost 5 years.
That
Diego,
one
you?
time, Marissa, that one time.
I know. That's why I bring it. I'm like, that one time you need it, I will bring it. Especially now that I don't have like a physical SIM card in my phone anymore, but I don't know.
And bearing in mind that, sometimes we commit to a place for a month and then we're stuck there. If that one time, once even every 4 years, you need it, great. I think there's two use cases really nowadays, and you're totally right, Marissa. In most, I haven't used it in ages personally. Right?
I was curious. I was like, am I missing out on something? I don't know.
No. You're
it's like the backup. I know.
If you're traveling with a group of people, it can. So there's actually a few things. Look, first of all, it's quite comfortable because once you've connected to it, it feels just like normal internet. And your laptop will connect to it automatically. Like if it's just something that you've just got constantly plugged in and you're using it there day in, day out, you don't want to always have to connect your phone. It drains your battery. Right. So that's like the comfort fair. Type of reason, right?
Okay.
If you're with a group of people, so like you might be 3 or 4 people and all of you are kind of relying on one, again, it's an easier way to do it because everybody has the password for that. Nobody has to unlock a phone, right? So that part's nice as well. And then the tech behind what you were just saying, Jeff, is that different devices, so including your phone, you can buy a phone that's primarily set up for the US, or you can buy a phone that's primarily set up for Europe or for other areas in the world, right? And so then this phone has been optimized for serving they're called bands of data, basically bands of the local internet service providers and mobile data in general. Some of these devices are more globally optimized and some are more regional, right? And so that's why what you experienced there, Jeff, your phone must have been missing one of those bands, one of those local bands that was being used, but your device had that enabled, right? And so the two different devices can work with the same network in a different way, right? So again, backup of a backup of a backup.
But that's important. I guess like if you're listening and you're like, how do you do this? Like when you arrive, how do you make sure you have Wi-Fi? Like even the 3 of us, even when we haven't used this device, we're like, you bring backup, and just like, I would say Wi-Fi is like, just when it works specifically when you think about this as digital nomad, do not take a risk. Like you check before, like we really do go through everything to check the Airbnb, places around us, the SIM card, the Wi-Fi, like everything.
I will drop one more in there, and this is the wild card. If you're super high tech, do consider getting yourself Starlink. We've experimented with it for the first time just recently on a trip. We were in Kenya, and we had a lot of issues in our first month there. And then in the second month, we got the Starlink, and obviously the internet was pretty amazing with that. So if you're the kind of person that loves to go a little more remote, or you're going to a place where you know that there's going to be internet challenges, consider getting one. There's a Starlink. They're heavy. It's quite a lot to carry.
I was going to say, the problem is that they're kind of big, right?
They're a bit bulky.
That's my understanding because I haven't used it.
But there are versions of it, right? There's like the more portable one and the very much less portable one. The more portable one isn't light, but you can carry it with you.
Right. I know of one person who, just a super techie person who does that. I feel like hopefully this is like irrelevant a year or two from now, and like everyone's just gonna have these tiny little Starlink devices, and like you won't need any of this. I don't know, but for now, this is what's up. So with that, I guess moving into the next one here is to make sure you have all the adapters and chargers that you need. So this is kind of a little bit of a blanket statement. I'll name a few, and you guys feel free to chime in with other ones that you carry or buy. And it's funny, even with the 3 of us, we kind of use, like Jeff and I use the same thing. Diego uses something different. So there's not one size fits all. But if you are going to try to use a one size fits all, that Jeff and I do, I usually bring 2. They're called like universal chargers, typically, if you were to search on Amazon or search online or go to a store. And it looks like a little cube. It's kind of... it's like smaller than the length of a phone, but a little bit thicker, more cube-like. And it basically has a way where it has like what do you call like the prongs? Like what's the word for that? What do you call that part of it?
Isn't it?
Plug, yeah. Like
Pins?
the actual part you plug into a wall. Pins. Oh. I don't know. I don't actually know the words, but whatever you actually plug into the wall, whatever those metal parts that you want to call it are, they basically have little sliders, and you can slide out, like if you're in North America, if you're in Europe, if you're in Africa, if you're in Asia. And I would say the only place that my universal adapter didn't work have been some places in Africa. I've had to buy a separate one that just like it works in some countries there, but I had to buy a separate like little adapter when I got there, and that was a surprise. That was one of those things why we'll talk about you should get somewhere a day early, because I got there just assuming my universal charger would work like it does in every other country. And I was like, oh, I can't charge my phone. I can't charge my computer. Luckily, I've got some backups for now. So get a universal adapter. And then in that, it usually has a place where you can plug in any country's plug into that as well. So if you were to plug in your charger, your phone charger, your computer charger, it plugs into that. But it usually also, I always make sure I get the ones with 4 USB ports as well. It sounds silly. There's some that have 1, that have 2. I get the 4 because I'm always plugging like my Kindle, my phone, my backup phone, my computer, my whatever. I don't know. I'm charging my backup chargers. You'll see there's a lot of little tech stuff we carry, but the universal charger with a bunch of USB ports is like my number one most important one. And then I think the 3 of us can all, and Diego uses something different, so I'll let him chime in a second. But I think we can all agree that we all bring backup little battery packs, like I don't know what you want to call them, little power banks. I usually literally carry like 4 mini ones for my phone that I'm always charging one and leaving at home and bringing one with me, and I'm bound to lose one. Like those just always disappear. I have it in like a bag, a purse, a backup, my work bag. Like I just always want to make sure I have that, because the last thing, sometimes I don't even know where I'm staying in a place and I literally won't be able to get home if my phone dies. That's probably a mistake that has happened. And I bring little backup, batteries for my computer as well. So anything to add to that?
We're going to take a quick pause right there to tell you about our remote travel jobs daily. Are you currently looking for a job that's going to allow you to become a digital nomad and work and travel around the world? We've got exactly what you're looking for. Every week, as part of our free plan, we handpick 2 jobs that are perfect for becoming a digital nomad that'll allow you to work and travel around the world while you're doing it. That's 2 jobs per week for free. We also have a premium plan in which we send out 2 hand-picked jobs that are also perfect for becoming a digital nomad every single day, Monday through Friday. So that's 40 hand-picked jobs by us that are ideal for becoming a digital nomad. So make sure you take a look at these 2 plans. It is beachcommute.com/travel-jobs. That's beachcommute.com/travel-jobs. All the details will be there. Yeah, just anything that you're going to need for your actual device, for your laptop. I am so guilty of this. I'll forget some sort of adapter. Like, for example, I just got the new MacBook, and now everything's USB-C. It's not using that Lightning thing. So you need adapters for that. You might need an adapter to plug in a USB, or you might need... I always forget to bring like a cable, like a HDMI cable. If you need that, bring that. Basically anything that you plug in, just double check. Anything that you're plugging in
Bring multiple ones, because they might break.
Multiple. Yeah, exactly. And don't forget your computer charger. I think one of us did that. You did
last
that.
year when I went to Costa Rica, exactly a year ago, I didn't bring a charger and I had to use someone else's. Like, it was a mess. someone came down and brought it like a week later. But
and if you end up somewhere like in Costa Rica, like when I was in Santa Teresa, somebody's laptop didn't work. I think it was Coco who was on this. It was on the podcast at one point. Like I think your laptop didn't work because of VPN issues or something, or the laptop broke. I can't remember. But when you get way out there, you have to go all the way back to San Jose, like the center of the country, to get a solution to fix whatever problem you didn't have. So yeah, I think the theme here is backups on backups for sure.
Yeah, I bring like 2 computer chargers now in case like things do break along the way, and you're lucky if you kind of have a backup. So yeah, and Diego, you don't use I just found you don't use the universal charger. So tell us what you use.
I got it a few times, and I must have just got some cheap quality one, and it kept on not working properly. And I was like, okay,
that's why I do bring 2 of them.
Yeah. And if one breaks, then you're really in trouble. No, I really like how Apple has, again, it depends on what devices you're using, but Apple's got these like unpluggable connectors, those pieces. And I just get the European version of that, and I get the US version of that, and that covers you for like 90% of the destinations. And then there's a few other specific ones that you can either just buy an adapter locally. So I kind of just do that because I find them to be a little bit smaller, less clunky. But hey, as long as you're thinking about this part, that's the important part.
Bring something that converts, that you can plug in your devices to a wall, whatever that looks like for you.
Yeah, next one is you may need, a few of my friends have definitely needed it. It's a VPN. So VPN stands for Virtual Private Network. And you may need it, depending on the organization that you're working for, to log in through the United States. So let me unpack what that means. Basically, a VPN allows you to change or mask where your location is that you're accessing the internet, and make it look like it's coming from a different place. So there are some companies actually have their own internal systems that you can't log into unless you're based from a certain location. So, for example, if that's the United States and you've traveled to a different country, you literally cannot log into your company's system unless you're going through the United States. So a VPN allows you to mask where your computer is logging in from, and you can change to a new location so you can actually get into the system. Seen that happen actually quite a few times at this point. And also, like non-work related, you're probably not going to be able to use most of your streaming devices. Like if you're watching HBO, if you're watching Netflix or something like that. And yeah, and that's kind of a pain in the ass. You're like, oh man, I can't watch what I was watching. You can generally do that if you've got a good VPN. It's not too expensive. I usually use ExpressVPN. I think AVG has one and Nord has one as well. But if you pay for a year, I think it might run you like $50 to $100 or something like that. But if you do have that with your organization, you should probably figure out before you go, and then also subscribe to one of these services, because you don't want to figure it out last minute.
Yeah, and to add to that, there's some, even if it's not some, like some companies require it, some industries, if you're like in banking or things like that, like just know for your industry and for your job and your company. And even if you hear that and you're like, oh, that's not me, I don't need that. There's definitely situations where I've traveled. I think I mentioned this in one podcast, for example, in Indonesia, like I can't log into my own personal or business banking account if I'm not logging in through a VPN. There's places I've been in Nigeria where I couldn't even log on to some like travel sites or just like very typical websites that you take for granted. And you're like, why can't this work? Like, why can't I log into my email? Why can't I log into my bank? Why can't I log into Instagram? Like, you just never know. And it's some countries that are just known for more scams often, or just like more sketchiness as a whole, like where there's people who will are phishing, catfishing or whatever that is that you call it. So you'd be surprised. There's like random times where like I might use it once every 4 or 5 months or something, but when you need it, you really need it. So to have it set up ahead of time is important, because sometimes you can't like buy it or set it up once you're already in that country. An example for Oman, that was an especially weird one. That's probably not where you're going to go on your very first trip, but I was there with Diego, and you have to go through a VPN to use even WhatsApp, to use any sort of Zoom, absolutely any messaging, any calling, but you couldn't set it up once you were there. So I didn't do that ahead of time, and I was lucky I was with Diego, so I had to like hotspot to his phone through his VPN to even purchase and set up my VPN. So that is definitely one you want to do ahead of time. Just, it's kind of like the MiFi device. You may not always need it, but if you do, it's really important to have it set up ahead of time.
If you do, you really need it, because imagine you can't actually call anyone with
I wouldn't have been able to work that whole month if I wasn't there with you. I don't know what I would have done.
So, and then also just add VPNs in general, guys. It's worth getting them. It's worth using them. I would never use the public internet in an airport without a VPN. I typically now use VPNs when I'm in cafes as well, especially if I feel like it's a place where maybe there's a little bit more of people kind of phishing and a bit more hacking going on there. And every time that I'm accessing anything like banking related, anything money related, anything payments, I will always use a VPN as well. So just something to bear in mind. Like, it's just such a useful tool.
Yeah, just kind of like by default, if I'm logging into my bank, just automatically pop on the VPN. It's just safer that way, for sure. If you're entering a passcode, just VPN it.
Yeah, just to give you guys an example, my fiance's card has now, the same card has effectively been hacked twice in the span of like 2 months in Bali. It's ridiculous.
Was it through? Do you think it was through co-working?
It must have been through some. Yeah, because it was an online card only that she used, so it must have been through something that she was connected to, some internet thing. I wanted, before we hop on to moving on to sort of the on arrival thing that you're going to want to do. There's one more that I think is really important ahead of time, and that's checking your time zone. So you want to, if you're a person who maybe organizes meetings ahead of time in a week or two into the future, or you might have, I don't know if you use Calendly, or you might use some other tool that lets you set up meetings automatically, where people can just book a time with you based on availability that you've kind of placed there. You need to make sure to always check what is the time zone going to be, where you're going to go, and you're going to want to adjust that in that tool, in that like calendar booking platform, before it can start to book times in, right? Because the number of times I used to do a lot of interview calls, and I would arrive in a new place and I'd have interview calls at like 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 5 a.m. And I had to reschedule, 7 or 8 calls just to get myself settled in.
Yeah.
And that's shitty. Sometimes you miss them. Sometimes you have a call while you're on a flight. So yeah, just double check your calls, your meetings that are coming up. It's an easy one to forget. And it does look pretty unprofessional if you're the one who's not there because you just so happen to be on the flight and you didn't tell anybody.
And a couple other like quick things to buy before we move on to the on arrival. So AirPods, or at least some headphones. I travel with so many of them. Just it's really important for calls, for just a lot of the things you do you don't even think about. This is sort of, I guess, a nice to have, but I know Diego and I both use it. I think you do too, Jeff, but like we call it a neck stand. It's like a little stand for your laptop that props it up a little higher so you don't hurt your neck as much. And then if you're using that, it's really good to have a separate keyboard and mouse. So that's more, I would say it's like you don't absolutely have to have that to get started, but if you're working somewhere long term, it's just really nice to have a more ergonomically like set up for your neck, for your wrists, for your hands, for your eyes, so that you can work longer hours and be more productive and not burn your body out. So those are some other ones I would do to like purchase ahead of time to bring with you.
Maybe Diego wants to add, if we're in the nice to haves, also kind of useful is the noise canceling.
Those are a big deal for me. Yeah, I use it daily. And like it's my.
We were talking about that before this episode. I was thinking, I need to use those more often because they're really, really effective, especially when you're working in a public space and there's a lot of noise distractions. They work really well for kind of putting you into the zone and making you super, super productive, especially if you're working from a cafe.
There's a few sides to it as well that are worth noting. Like people might go, well, I don't really know if I need it. I've kind of got my ear plug-in ones. But first of all, it does actually cancel the noise incredibly well, right? So that's like the baseline. And then you can turn on, I turn on rain sounds and some, no lyrics music, and I'm out. Like I'm not going to hear a thing, right? Like even the loud motorbikes in Bali, I won't hear them. And then the second thing about it is that if you're in a co-working space and you got this big chunky thing on your head, it does send a strong signal to everybody else that like this person is in the zone and is working there. Because the number of times that you get interrupted by somebody, whether it's at a cafe or at a co-working space, if you just to add all of those, all that time up and the amount of time that you lose in productivity just with those little conversations and being kind of pulled out, it does count. And the third reason I really love it is because just the act of doing something that you do every time just before you become productive, you are creating an anchor. What's that called? I think it's NLP, neuro linguistic programming, right? Like the idea that you're creating this anchor for your mind to go, oh, we're productive now, or we're going to be productive now, right? So you put them on, you listen to something similar. You've got it's like having an office when you're on the move, when you don't have an office. That's always the same.
I think we actually have one more on our list that we didn't talk about. Was it? Did we talk about unlocking your phone?
I kind of put that in with the I think we were talking about eSIMs and other things, but
who's saying we'll cut that part. Okay, so that is everything pre-arrival, and now we're going to get into on arrival and then day one of work. So on arrival, we've actually only got one. It's probably only going to apply to certain people in certain situations, and that's to get a SIM card. And I've actually never gotten a SIM card on arrival. So can either one of you walk me?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, no, because I've always just done the international roaming thing. So maybe one of you could walk me through like that process, what that looks like.
I can quickly, Diego, chime in anything also. So this is on arrival because I mean like literally at the airport. So I knew nothing about SIM cards when I first started traveling, and I was like, how does it work? I don't even know where it is in my phone. What does this mean? But so if maybe you already know this or have done it, but if you're brand new, basically it's like a little chip that you put in your phone that gives you phone service in your local area. So eSIMs did not exist when we started traveling. So like some of this may be totally irrelevant like a year from now. But for what it's worth, when you get somewhere, you might want a local physical SIM card. They are always less expensive. So even if you're like, okay, I'm going to get the global eSIM just so I have something when I land, I would have that just to land, just in case, or if I land somewhere really late at night and the SIM card in the airport is closed, the stand is closed, it's like a backup now. But the SIM cards, the physical ones, are going to be just way better bang for your buck. And almost always, with the exception of a few really small airports, there's almost always, like, when you are walking out of the airport and you see, like, there's ATMs and there's a place to rent, the rental car and the excursions, there's almost always at least one, sometimes two or three, depending on the size of the airport, little stands where they sell SIM cards. They're going to be a little bit more expensive than what you would get if you got into town and just found a place. But for me, just the convenience of, like, I don't want to think about it tomorrow. And this is saying, like, how are you just most effective right when you arrive somewhere to be able to work the next day? Like, I want my phone to work. I want cell service. So I would almost always buy that physical SIM card at the airport before I've even left the airport doors, so that I have local service. If you know your way around somewhere and you have a global SIM and you want to wait a day or two, they almost always sell physical SIM cards at kind of like your gas station, not gas station, but like the, I don't know, like the 7-Eleven. I'm trying to think of like an equivalent, but just like little convenience stores, that's the word. You can almost always buy them there or in little phone carrier places, unless you're going to be like in the middle of nowhere, but almost always you can find them. But anyway, Diego, do you have anything to add to that? I don't know if I've just confused people more.
No. I thought that was great to hear that perspective as well. Maybe a few quick things to add. One, just as you're looking for the providers, well, maybe we should have added this to the section before. You're going to want to do your research real quick before heading out, just to know what is the right SIM card to get. And that actually does make a difference, because there's going to be anywhere between, like, I don't know, 3 providers to 10 different providers in an area. And there are going to be certain providers that have just invested a lot more money into having a great network in certain parts of the country. And so you want to get the provider that has a good network coverage in the area that you're going to be in. And again, that can be different in different areas. So it's very simple. If you're going to go to Medellin, you just go Medellin city in Colombia, you just type best, data provider or best SIM card in Medellin. And you're going to find, a list of maybe the top 3 telling you which one to get. So just keep that in mind. Then you know what you're looking for at the airport. Because at the airport, you're just going to end up buying.
You'll get lied to.
That's it. And whoever, pulls you in first, you'll be like, great, that's a SIM card I got. Then you're stuck with that. And there's 2 reasons you're going to want to make sure that you get the right one. One, so that you have a good backup in that area that you're in. And the second one is that if you decide to travel out a little bit further and you want to work from a maybe more remote place, or you just want to be covered to be able to work when you're on a trip as well, then having data with better coverage is going to be really valuable too. So you definitely want to look into that. Then when you're actually on the ground and you're looking for a shop, like if you don't do it at the airport, now that you know what the data providers are, you can just Google the name of that data provider and you're going to find the little shops pop up around you as well. So that's a really easy way to get the SIM cards. But highly recommend it.
And to add to that, Dave, I think it's so important, it's like you said, to research that beforehand, because when you're in the airport and you don't have a lot of airports do have Wi-Fi now, but let's say it doesn't, and you have these 3 stands and you're like, who do I choose? You literally won't know, and you have no way to research it. And to just like exaggerate your example, I have been in 2 different beach towns that I can think of. One little island in Panama, one place where where I'm going now in Costa Rica, where the carriers that I've gotten, when I say, like, it's not like it was worse, they literally did not get, like, the coverage was so bad that they did not get service. But if I had just gotten a different SIM card, like, the person sitting next to me had full service. So not only it's like, oh, it doesn't work as well, it's not as good, it's like it was literally useless. Like, I bought it for nothing. So it is really important to know the areas you're going and to know. It seems really minor. These are a lot of weird things.
That's a big deal.
Even thinking about this, we forgot to say in the pre-arrival, but do really Google, like, whatever town you're going to be spending in time in, or whatever, if you're traveling around, to say, like, what has the best coverage in this particular place, and make sure you buy that one.
And I want to double down on that, Marissa, because
like
this is a story of yours.
Triple down.
Yeah, all right.
It's a story where, like, this happened to me once, right? For the trips that we do with Wi-Fi Tribe, it's our standard procedure to buy all of the top 3 providers, take all of those SIM cards into each of the accommodations that we're getting, test them all in all of the areas of those accommodations, and ultimately make the decision for which one we're going to use as the backup, right? Because the difference is that intense, even within a city, right? It's pretty crazy. But yeah, there you go.
Day 1, this is, I want to say, when we say day 1, this is hopefully not day 1 of working. The 3 of us might do that now. We might get to a place Sunday night and start working Monday. But if you're newer to digital nomad life, especially if this is your first trip, I really highly recommend give yourself a full 24 hours of before you have to start work. So if that means arrive on Saturday, so you have all of Sunday to get set up and feel good, or if you have to fly somewhere Sunday or Monday or Tuesday, if you can take a day off to get settled. If you're newer to this, we just want to make sure that you have the time to feel settled, and it gets easier and easier the more you go. You don't always have to do this as your years progress as a nomad, but give yourself a full day to kind of get set up. And so the first thing that you might do in this full 24 hours of your prep, and it is important to know that sometimes it does take 24 to 48 hours to really get settled and ready to work in a new environment. And that's part of the hardship of nomad life. We don't like to sugarcoat it. It takes time. It takes mental energy. These are, if you think about your normal weekend, you might be resting or working out or napping or I don't know, whatever, taking care of tasks. As a nomad, you might need a full day in a new place to just get set up in your new environment. And that's why we recommend moving a little slower, especially in the beginning. So the first thing when you first get to your Airbnb is to do a speed test in that space. So we did talk ahead of time about have your Airbnb host or someone do a speed test for you to make sure. But again, this is the catfishing episode, just to make sure they didn't catfish you when you get there. There's a bunch of different apps and websites you can do. But if you literally just Google speed test, click on whatever one you want, doesn't really matter. You'll click a little button says test speed now. I literally never did this before I started Nomad Life. I didn't know it was important. Maybe it's more common practice now. But do it. It looks like a little odometer kind of reading. It'll have a little arrow or numbers. And again, you're hoping for 20 and above is lovely. But if it's, 10 and above, you're good. And that means when you're working that next day and you're doing video calls or calls with your company, you're probably going to be good. But if you do arrive somewhere and you get to your Airbnb and you're like, oh shit, there's 1 megabyte or 2 megabytes, you might want to find a real backup, that day, that full day, and find the co-working space or cafe that's going to be quiet enough and good enough Wi-Fi speed for you to work. So it's kind of double check that your home has the Wi-Fi that you thought it did and that it's workable when you get there.
It's the moment of truth. There's always when people show up at the place,
Never
there's
know.
always the biggest Wi-Fi person is probably Diego. One of the first things, there's always somebody guaranteed to walk in and be like, all right, what's the Wi-Fi speed? Don't even drop the bags. Just immediately on the speed test.
Yeah. So there was once a place, I had a condo in Mexico that I stayed at where the Wi-Fi was really great and strong, in the living room kitchen area, but it was made of cinder blocks, this whole building. And when it was a great place. I loved it. But I went back into the bedroom, there was almost zero Wi-Fi. It didn't get 30 feet. But I had cell service in that room, and I really didn't have cell service in the kitchen. So I had to, just figure out, I was where am I taking calls? If I need to be in this room, the Wi-Fi speed is this. If I have to use my phone in my bedroom, it'll be that. I was actually supposed to live with a friend that month, and I was I actually can't share this because I need the Wi-Fi and private calls, and I can't do this. So it really is important to even test in multiple rooms where the Wi-Fi works and what the speed is.
And then if it's not up to your expectations based on what you discussed with the Airbnb host, I've messaged them before. I haven't had ever an issue where they didn't address it. Sometimes it takes them a little while, but in those instances it does. It actually takes us to our next point, which is start checking out the cafes and the co-working spaces. And I would, as long as we're double down on everything, I would double down on getting there early, on a Saturday, Friday night, something like that, so that you can start exploring some of the cafes. Just go Saturday morning, Sunday morning, start, go to a couple cafes, connect to their internet and see what the speed is. Again, you can use speedtest.net to find those speeds. And then just have a few in your back pocket that you can go to just if you want to get out of the house or if your Wi-Fi speeds don't match your expectations.
Yeah, and they're just a good backup, too, to know in case, sometimes, I don't know, I've been in places like Mexico or Bali or South Africa where it's okay, there's no power here today. Just last time I was in Mexico in October, they were doing some construction and it was just several blocks of area. It was just no power today, surprise. It's the day after I got there. So you might need to go to a place that has a generator or just has Wi-Fi. So it's important just to know those backup places because you don't want to be scrambling an hour before your call the next morning with no Wi-Fi and you're Googling where to go. You don't know where to go and you get to somewhere and it's actually really noisy. So even if you just you don't have to like sit and eat at every cafe, but even if you just walk in, look at it, see if other people are working, does it feel friendly? Does it feel, like I say, computer friendly? Does it feel quiet enough? If you can do a quick speed test, even on your phone, you don't even have to open up your laptop. Just have those backups ready, because when you need them, it's usually like you might need them last minute and you don't want to waste your time finding it when you need it.
I completely forgot about load shedding and power outages. Like you talking about Costa Rica earlier. I remember Santa Teresa, they had these planned like, hey, power's out for the day.
Yeah.
Like, oh man. You really gotta plan for that. They could really damage your productivity for sure if you don't have any power. So last thing, I think it's the last thing we've got on the list. Check your backdrop if you're using video calls.
Yeah.
I've had this problem so many times, and there are now really, really good solutions for it. But it's best to not. When I was working for my company, I had a lot of employees, and people still don't translate this digital nomad life to like productivity. They don't understand that you're being productive, especially when you've got a beautiful background. Like if it's January and your employees or your team, wherever, are in Michigan, United States, or Boston or Maine, and they're freezing inside of their house, and you've got, palm trees and the beach in your background, they're not going to understand, and they're going to probably be a little upset and maybe a little bit jealous, because it doesn't translate in their head that you've done this by choice and that you are being productive. So in any of those instances, or if you've just got like an ugly backdrop, I try to set up somewhere so that it actually looks professional in my background to some degree. And if I don't have that, there's a lot of options now on most of the meeting platforms. I don't use Zoom anymore. Maybe you can tell me if you guys do, but I know in Google Meet you can use the blur bagged. We've been playing around with all kinds of different AI generated backgrounds and stuff the last couple of weeks, so that's definitely a really good option. Do you guys have any experiences or anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would say so much more with like Google Meet and Zoom, and like just the typical meeting things do have like the fake backgrounds and things like that, which are just so nice to have. But it's funny, Jeff, I wasn't thinking of this when you said like avoid the pretty backgrounds. I was thinking like avoid the really ugly, like unprofessional backgrounds where you're like in some room and your unmade bed is behind you, or there's like some weird bars on a window. But I can't tell you the number of times that I have like dragged a table facing a weird corner just with a white wall and stacked, but like it's tricky. So you do want to make sure those days before that you can find a way that your computer is kind of facing. It seems simple, but it really is important to like face some sort of way where you're not just like sharing all your personal belongings behind you, or it looks professional enough is really important.
We've talked about that, nailing this first couple weeks, that first month, if you're working for somebody, and just like we've talked about over communicating and just really putting forth this professionalism. So like what I'm talking about with the beautiful background thing, if you're talking to your CEO who just lets you go on a 1 month trial or something, if you've got palm trees and a beautiful ocean in your background, he might get the impression that you're on vacation. So typically what I would do when I first started that thing is just a really mute background, just a wall, or if you happen to be, near a bookshelf or something like that, just put that in the background. Just looks super, super professional.
Perfect. So I think that actually brings us to the end of everything. Before I share, I think that was everything. So if you are listening to this, so we talked a lot about, you might be listening to this if you already have a remote job or you're just getting set up and ready to go. But if you heard this and you're like getting all the use of the ways just so you know what's up, but you don't yet have a remote job, we send out 2 awesome remote companies every single week that have multiple job postings hiring for people who they let you actually travel anywhere in the world while you work. So if you want to join that, go to beachcommute.com/email. And if you sign up, you will get those alerts each week, along with awesome podcast notifications and our personal travel pictures and some fun other information. Anything else, guys, before we hop off?
That's it. Maybe just letting everybody know that there was another episode you mentioned there, Jeff, that seems to relate really well to this one. So maybe we could add that into the show notes, because that might be something that would just be really great for people to be able to watch or listen to as well. But yeah, it's been fun to talk about this. Really had us thinking about things that we haven't, they're on autopilot, and now we're trying to dig them back up, and we realize just all of the many things that we do that we're not even aware of anymore at this point.
I think to that, it's important to note, if this episode really overwhelmed you and you're like, oh my God, there's 500 things to do in order to even work efficiently, how will I ever do this? We had to think really hard to the point where we're like talking with each other beforehand of, isn't this obvious? Do we need to say this? But It's really not. So I want you to know that that gives you hope. The same way when you first start driving a car and you're like, oh my gosh, like I have to look in this mirror and then that mirror and press this pedal and move that. Like it feels overwhelming at first, but it really does become second nature to the point where like you've got the equipment, you know what to do, you know how to check things. It does get a lot easier. So don't feel like it's going to be really overwhelming and like really hard forever in your nomad life, but it does take some time in the beginning to start to just get familiar with the tech and the SIM cards and the things, but it's not impossible, and it does get way easier to the point, again, where we really had to be like, what do we do? We don't even know. It's so automatic for us now, so that should give you hope.
And if you made it through this checklist, you will be so over-prepared. You'll have...
Yeah.
You will have... If you go through everything on this checklist, you'll have zero problems. You'll be way more prepared than any of us. So I still forget stuff on there. Like,
for sure.
Forgot the adapter again for the 19th time. Forgot my... It's always the microphone. Forgot the microphone again.
Well, with that, we hope that you enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you next week.